Tonight at 6, America's former FBI director accuses Donald Trump's White House of lying about him. He was fired by the president, saying the FBI was in disarray. Now James Comey hits back.
The administration then chose to defame me and, more importantly, the FBI. Those were lies, plain and simple.
Also on tonight's programme, 3 more arrests in the London Bridge terror investigation. New CCTV footage shows the attackers meeting at a gym 5 days before they killed 8 innocent people. The moment armed police ended their rampage, opening fire as they arrived at the scene.
They have responded and neutralised the threat as firearms officers within 6 seconds. And I think that is kind of exceptional to the individuals and the training that they've received.
A castle, a laundrette and a windmill. Today they're all polling stations. Voting in the general election ends at 10 p.m. Life under the Taliban 3 years after British combat troops left. Helmand is back under their control. A special report.
The motion is therefore carried.
Scotland's Episcopal Church agrees to same-sex marriage, a first for Anglican churches in the UK.
Coming up in Sports Day later in the hour on BBC News, for the first time in over 50 years, an England football team has reached a World Cup final. That's after the under-20s beat Italy.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC's News at 6. In one of the most politically explosive hearings Washington has seen, the former director of the FBI has accused White House staff of lying. James Comey, who was fired by President Trump, was giving evidence to a Senate committee which is trying to establish whether there was Russian interference in last year's election and whether Mr. Trump's campaign team colluded in that effort. As our North America editor John Sopel reports, the hearings could have significant implications for the Trump presidency.
People talk about the crackle of expectation. In Washington this morning, in this room, as James Comey walked in, it was palpably there.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please be seated.
It's being called a political Super Bowl, and the former FBI director's opening statement didn't disappoint as he reflected on the manner of his being fired.
The shifting explanations confused me and increasingly concerned me. They confused me because the president and I had had multiple conversations about my job, both before and after he took office. And he had repeatedly told me I was doing a great job and he hoped I would stay.
And he spoke of the president's portrayal of him and the organization he'd led.
The administration then chose to defame me and, more importantly, the FBI by saying that the organization was in disarray, that it was poorly led, that the workforce had lost confidence in its leader. Those were lies, plain and simple.
But first, the committee chair wanted to go over alleged Russian involvement. If this were a game show, this was the quickfire round.
Do you have any doubt that Russia attempted to interfere in the 2016 elections?
None.
Do you have any doubt that the Russian government was behind the intrusions in the DNC and the DCCC systems and the subsequent leaks of that information?
No, no doubt.
Do you have any doubt that the Russian government was behind the cyber intrusion into state voter files?
No.
General Mike Flynn.
Michael Flynn, the National Security Advisor, fired for lying about his contacts with Russia, the president wanted to protect, and according to Comey, asked him to drop the FBI inquiry into him. Was that obstruction of justice?
I don't think it's for me to say whether the conversation I had with the president was an effort to obstruct. I took it as a very disturbing thing, very concerning, but that's a conclusion I'm sure the special counsel will work towards to try and understand what the intention was there and whether that's an offense.
But why, one senator wanted to know, if what the president had asked about Michael Flynn was so wrong, hadn't the FBI director cried foul immediately?
I was so stunned by the conversation that I just took it in. And the only thing I could think to say, because I was playing in my mind, because I was going to remember every word he said, I was playing in my mind, What should my response be? And that's why I very carefully chose the words.
Comey was at his most damning when he explained to the committee why he needed to keep records of his conversations with the president.
I was honestly concerned that he might lie about the nature of our meeting, and so I thought it really important to document. That combination of things I'd never experienced before, but it led me to believe I got to write it down, and I got to write it down in a very detailed way.
Days after his sacking, President Trump fired out a warning shot on Twitter that Comey had better hope there aren't tapes of their conversations. Today, it brought this riposte from the former FBI director.
I've seen the tweet about tapes. Lordy, I hope there are tapes.
In Washington this morning, bars opened up early to show the hearing. Everyone will have their own views on what's happened, but the key judgment over whether there was legal wrongdoing will now rest with the independent special counsel who's taken over this investigation. Today marks the end of Act 1. Act 2 now moves to that inquiry.
Well, there was one bar in Washington that was offering its clientele a free drink every time that Donald Trump tweeted. Smart move. He didn't tweet once, but his son did, saying there was no obstruction of justice. And I've just bumped into a senior White House staffer who would just say one thing to me: the president is not a liar. In the next half hour, we're due to hear from the president's external counsel, his lawyer that he's taken on to deal with all of this. And I would expect him to hit back hard. They are not going to let James Comey's testimony stand. The Trump White House wants to hit back. George.
John, thank you very much. New images have emerged of the moment armed police shot dead the 3 London Bridge attackers, firing within seconds of arriving at the scene. Police have made 3 more arrests. As our Home Affairs correspondent Tom Simons reports, police have also been looking at CCTV footage of the men 5 days before the attack.
5 days before their rampage, the 3 attackers meet: Khurram Butt, Rashid Redouane and Yusuf Zagba. Redouane puts his phone on the ground while they walk away for a conversation, perhaps worried it will somehow be used to record what he said. They seem in good spirits. There's no sign they are about to kill and maim innocent people. The camera's outside a gym where one of the 3, Khurram Butt, worked out. The gym is closed. Renovations and today massive media attention. But outside we met Fahad Khan, Khurram Butt's cousin-in-law. He argued with Butt about his religious views and his desire to put them into practice abroad.
He wanted to go to Syria and to fight, but since I think because of the family pressure or might be the intervention by the authorities who seized his passport or whatever, he couldn't go there.
He identified from a picture another man regularly seen at the gym. This is Sajil Shahid, once accused of being a leading member of the banned Islamist group Al Muhajirun, though in the past he's denied it.
You're leader of Al Muhajirun, weren't you? You were leader of Al Muhajirun.
No, I wasn't.
On the wall here is a statement. It says that Sajil Shahid is not employed at the gym and does not own the business. Now that might be strictly true, but a number of people have told us that he is directly connected with this place.
More CCTV images today showed the final seconds of the attack in Borough Market. The killers had just set upon their final victim. When a police armed response team arrived, they had seconds to assess the situation. They opened fire and it was over.
I don't think anything more could have been done given the circumstances. They've responded to an incident which has lasted kind of 8 minutes. They have responded and neutralised the threat as firearms officers within 6 seconds. And I think that is kind of exceptional to the individuals and the training that they've received.
Among the many stories from that night, one stands out: the British Transport Police officer who stepped in alone to try to stop the attack. In a statement today, he said, "I want to say to the families that lost their loved ones, I'm sorry I couldn't do more, and want you to know I did everything I could."
Started off, it seems, engaging with one of the terrorists and then ended up literally fighting with all 3 of them. As I say, it's just an astonishing story when you hear it.
The victims have now all been identified. 8 people from 5 countries, killed in an attack on the people of an international city. Tom Simons, BBC News.
Voting is taking place in the general election. Polling stations opened at 7 this morning and you've got until 10 o'clock this evening to cast your vote. Nearly 47 million people are registered to vote, electing 650 Westminster MPs. The first results are expected from around 11 p.m. Our political correspondent Gary O'Donoghue reports.
Morning. Bright and early, the first of the leaders out this morning was the Prime Minister with husband Philip, voting in her Berkshire constituency. Not long after came the man who wants her job, Jeremy Corbyn, greeting the photographers with a smile and a thumbs up as he made his way into a polling station in North London.
How are we doing? Welcome to the Lake District.
Just a hint of irony from the Lib Dem leader Tim Farron as he braved the elements on the way into the polling station. But he was well out of the way when tempers frayed among the watching photographers. And up and down the country, other party leaders were doing exactly the same. The SNP's Nicola Sturgeon and Paul Nuttall from the UK Independence Party. But it's not just about them. 47 million of us are registered at this election, one that's been overshadowed by the terrorist attacks in Manchester and London. Those attacks have meant a bigger police presence than usual, everyone conscious that the threat level is still severe.
This Westminster polling station is just one of 40,000, the length and breadth of the UK, where you're electing your 650 representatives to the House of Commons, just a couple of hundred yards down the road from here. Those new MPs will be here next Tuesday, and on Monday week, the Queen will open Parliament and set out the new government's plans.
Some peculiar places have been pressed into action as polling stations. This one is in a laundrette in Oxford. Here's one in a windmill in Hove. And this pub was playing host to voters in Exeter. Last orders for casting a ballot are at 10 o'clock tonight, with the first results due in before midnight. Gary O'Donoghue, BBC News.
And if you'd like to see all the results as they come in, you can join David Dimbleby and the team tonight on BBC One and the BBC's News Channel for Election 2017. That starts at 9:55 p.m. The Scottish Episcopal Church has made history, voting to allow same-sex couples to be married in church. That makes it the first branch of the Anglican Communion in the UK to do so. Michael Buchanan reports.
For Scottish Anglicans, it's now a case of here come the brides. The Episcopal Church, born of Protestantism's schism with Catholicism, has separated itself once more, this time from the wider Anglican family. At its General Synod in Edinburgh this afternoon, the Church backed a proposal to allow gay marriages to take place in its churches by just one vote.
The motion is therefore carried.
For supporters of the change, quiet satisfaction rather than unbridled joy.
It means equality. It means equality for gay couples who want to come and get married in church. It means equality for gay priests like me. But it also means that we've been a church that's decided to stay together over this. It means that the people who disagree with me are still going to have an honoured place in the church.
The vote will burnish Scotland's reputation as a global wedding venue. Joshua and Stephanie travelled from Leeds yesterday to get married in Gretna Green. Thousands of couples like them come to the town each year to tie the knot from across the UK. Now gay Anglican couples could join the marital march north.
So far, this church has not been able to capitalise on Gretna's worldwide reputation for holding weddings. But that could all change now this vote has been passed. Gay Anglican couples can now come to Scotland to get married in church.
For gay campaigners in the Church of England, which doesn't allow same-sex marriage, today's news is a bittersweet moment.
Well, luckily for me, I've got friends and family in Scotland, and yes, potentially I've got churches that I know up there. But I must admit, I really yearn to be able to get married in my home church where I've worshipped for many years with my partner, so that we can have our friends, family and our community around us.
Traditionalists, however, are appalled. They see support for gay marriage as the latest sign that Anglican churches, first in North America, now Scotland, are moving further from God's teachings.
Today's decision by the Scottish Episcopal Church to change the biblical and historic definition of marriage has highlighted the need to respond to the cries and pleas of those Scots who today have been marginalized by their leaders. The attempt to redefine marriage is not one that a faithful Christian can support.
The first gay marriage should take place in the Episcopal Church later this year, and while no priest will be forced to conduct such a wedding,
Today's vote puts pressure on other Anglican churches to follow suit. Michael Buchanan, BBC News, Edinburgh.
And the time is nearly 6:15. Our top story this evening. The former FBI director accuses Donald Trump's White House of lying about him. James Comey hits back after he was fired by the president. And still to come.
See, barbers all across the world do different things. You just got to put your own package together.
Cutting dialogue. How the National Theatre's latest play is hoping to attract new audiences.
Coming up in Sports Day in the next 15 minutes on BBC News, a very happy birthday for Yelena Ostapenko, the first unseeded player to reach the French Open women's final in over 30 years.
It's almost 3 years since British combat troops withdrew from Afghanistan after more than a decade fighting the Taliban. 456 British soldiers were killed, most of them in Helmand province. Since the withdrawal, Helmand and many other parts of the country have fallen back into the hands of the Taliban. Alia Atrafi from the BBC's Afghan service has been given rare access to the Taliban's effective capital, Musakala.
We just entered Taliban territory. We didn't have to travel far. All we had to do is get off the main road and we were in.
We passed through Sangin, where so many British soldiers fought and died. We're heading for Musakala. Our Taliban minder always with us. The bustling market looks like any in Afghanistan, but there are some telltale signs we're in Taliban territory. The men are all wearing traditional clothes, their beards grown long. The women are nowhere to be seen. We leave the market and head for the local high school. It's religious studies and only boys get an education. Our Taliban minder insists there are other lessons and that girls can go to school, just not here. The Taliban used to burn schools down. Now they are running them, funded by the central government.
The government and inspectors do their supervision. The Taliban don't have any problem with them.
In the playground, the main attraction seems to be our cameras. Most of the children have never seen anything like them. It's a reminder just how isolated these communities are. It is not just schools that the Taliban are running. This is the local hospital. It is also funded by the government, but lacks supplies.
There is no female doctor or a child specialist. You can't even have a chest x-ray here. And now the surgeon is leaving too because he hasn't been paid in the past 6 months.
The next day we meet the Taliban's spokesman. They remain a deeply controversial organization in Afghanistan, responsible for many deaths. But they claim their approach to governance has changed.
The Taliban has a separate committee for education, health, and local government. We don't only have military setups, but also administrative systems.
The Taliban have captured huge territories in Helmand, and now they have to govern them. The next challenge is how much they will join the modern world and how much they will reject it. Alia Atrafi, BBC News, Afghanistan.
The parents of a terminally ill baby are said to be devastated after losing a legal battle in the Supreme Court to take their son to the United States for treatment. Chris Gard and Connie Yates want 10-month-old Charlie Gard, who suffers from a rare genetic condition and has brain damage, to undergo experimental therapy. Our medical correspondent Fergus Walsh is at the Supreme Court for us. Fergus, a terribly sad story. Is this the end of the road for the parents?
Almost, George. The Supreme Court has said doctors should continue life support for Charlie until 5 p.m. tomorrow night to give time for the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg to decide if it wants to hear the case. Now, if it doesn't, doctors at Great Ormond Street Hospital will be free after that point to switch off the mechanical ventilator that keeps him alive. Now, the judges said they had the utmost sympathy for Charlie's parents, who left the court distraught, but they said it was Charlie's best interests that were paramount. They said that prolonging his life may simply prolong his suffering. The treatment being proposed was futile, and that's why he should be allowed to die with dignity. George.
Fergus, thank you very much. A company director has gone on trial accused of the manslaughter of 4 sailors who died when one of his yachts capsized in the North Atlantic. The crew on board the Cheeky Rafiki were returning from Antigua to the UK in May 2014 when it got into trouble. Today, a court heard that Douglas Innes failed to maintain the vessel and allowed it to set sail. Duncan Kennedy reports.
This is the Cheeky Rafiki on an earlier voyage before it capsized in the Atlantic, leading to the deaths of James Mayle, Andrew Bridge, Paul Gosling and Steve Warren. The prosecution say the yacht was being brought back to the UK from the Caribbean, but that it was broken and unsafe. The Cheeky Rafiki was operated by Douglas Innes. The prosecution say he was in the pub when the men called to say they were taking on water. After going to another pub, he contacted the authorities. That prompted this search by the American Coast Guard. They were criticised for calling it off too soon and later resumed it. The court heard it's possible James Mayle and Andrew Bridge may have survived sometime after the Cheeky Rafiki capsized. The bodies of the 4 men were never found. The prosecution say it was the loss of the Cheeky Rafiki's keel that led to the capsizing, but that the keel had been weakened by several groundings during earlier voyages, and that Douglas Innes had failed to get the boat properly maintained or professionally inspected. When this container ship found the upturned hull, they saw that its 3-ton keel had been broken off. In court, the prosecution said Douglas Innes had been trying to cut costs and had let the men set sail without proper charts. He denies 4 counts of manslaughter by gross negligence, and the first witnesses in this case will give evidence tomorrow. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News at Winchester Crown Court.
The growing resistance of bacteria to antibiotics is one of the most pressing challenges facing modern medicine. The problem has been made worse by the extensive use of antibiotics on farm animals. Now researchers at Leicester University are developing an alternative way of treating diseases in pigs. As our science correspondent Pallab Ghosh reports, it's hoped the findings will have benefits for humans too.
Nearly half the antibiotics used in Britain are given to livestock to keep them healthy.
Outdoor breeding.
Simon Watchhorn rears his pigs outdoors, so he doesn't use a great deal. But indoor intensive farms do. So if their animals become infected with drug-resistant superbugs, then the infection could be passed on to people if the meat isn't properly cooked.
There was a suggestion that resistant bacteria in animals might be passed to humans, and if we got another tool in our toolbox where we can deal with resistant bacteria, will it be in the animal population or in the human population, that's got to be a gain.
Researchers at Leicester University may have come up with just the tool that farmers are asking for. A virus called a phage that kills infections just like antibiotics. The phage attaches itself to a salmonella bug. The virus then injects it with its DNA and makes a salmonella harmless. And if it stops superbugs developing in animals, it'll reduce the risk to people.
It could be completely transformative for human health. There are many bacteria that we just can't treat now with antibiotics because they've become resistant to all the antibiotics we know. So using this natural enemy of the bacteria for specific diseases could really change the way that we treat infection in the future.
So far, they've shown that it works in the lab, and they freeze-dried the phage into a white powder. The next stage is to feed the phage to pigs to see if it works in practice. If it does, then it could begin to replace antibiotics, and that could greatly reduce the risk of superbugs developing on farms. Trials are due to begin later this year. If they're successful, doctors can then see if the phage virus can be used to treat people. Pallab Ghosh, BBC News, Leicester.
The Barber's Chair is taking centre stage in a new play at the National Theatre. The Barbershop Chronicles is the latest work by award-winning poet and playwright Inua Ellams. It explores issues around black identity and immigration. Our correspondent Elaine Dunkley has been to see it.
You see, but it's not always a good thing. When is discipline a bad thing?
From Lagos to London, the Black Barber Shop is a sacred sanctuary.
How old are you?
The sound of clippers, the backdrop to conversations, stories and confessions. Why is the barber shop such a source of fascination and beauty?
I think the reason why it's sacred is because lots of places where men gather to show strong emotion in Britain have been historically hostile to black men. And I think of places like, football stadiums or working men bars and little places like that. Therefore, barbershops were these safe places where we can go and be ourselves.
Where you just come from? Hey, London.
Your work explores black masculinity and at times redefining that. Why is that important to you?
I was born in Nigeria, and up until 12, my experience of the world was seen through a very Nigerian lens. And when I came to the UK was when I realized that I was black, firstly, then realized that I was an immigrant. And within all of that, I realized there were kind of already stereotypes of black guys, those of being rappers, being naturally born athletes. Aspects of identity where they're projected onto me and clashed with who I actually was or who I actually felt like.
There is a buzz around Inua Elam's work. He's received awards and accolades, but perhaps most importantly, he's attracting a new audience to theatre.
Parts of that I started to get emotional because I saw my father in parts, I saw myself dealing with things in parts.
For me as an Indian woman, when I go and get eyebrow threading, it's the conversations I have. So it was just so beautiful to have, and this is what we need in the theatre right now.
Elaine Dunkley, BBC News.
It's weather time. Here's Sarah Keith-Lucas. Hello.
Hi, George. Well, we've had a lot of cloud around today. There have been outbreaks of rain, a little bit like this picture. This was taken by one of our weather watchers earlier on in the afternoon in Gwynedd in North Wales. However, there's been a bit of sunshine out there too. Look at the contrasting skies here. This is Deal in Kent. So some clear skies as we head through into this evening, but there are still some heavy showers around. This is the recent satellite and radar showing where we've had the heavy showers, particularly heavy rain across Northern Ireland and showers in a line from the southwest of England up through South Wales and the Midlands too. More persistent rain across Scotland, and that'll push its way northwards overnight. So towards the northwest of Scotland, more persistent rain, whereas further south across the UK, clearer spells and scattered showers, particularly across the west of England and Wales too. Temperatures around 11 to 13 degrees. Now during tomorrow, I think we'll have fewer outbreaks of rain compared to today. Still some showers working from west to east through the day, but equally there'll be quite a good deal of sunshine. So the showers passing through fairly quickly on the breeze, and temperatures a touch warmer than they have been today, up to around about 22 degrees or so. Heading through Friday evening, overnight into Saturday, then initially it's dry, but then the next area of rain works in from the southwest. The wind's picking up here too. So a rather unsettled start to the weekend. I think we've got some wind and some rain, particularly across northern and western parts of the country. Now through Saturday, that rain works its way northeastwards. It looks like the southeast of England probably stays dry for a good part of the day, if not all day, and some brighter skies returning to Northern Ireland and Scotland later on too. Temperatures not doing too badly, between around 18 to 22 degrees. Now most of that rain should get out of the way in time for Sunday, so for most of us, Sunday probably going to be the better day of the weekend. Sunny spells, blustery showers, and temperatures around about 23 degrees. More details on the weather for the week ahead on our website. George.
Thank you, Sarah. And that's all from the BBC's News at 6, so it's goodbye from me. And on BBC One, we can now join the BBC's news teams where you are.